Tim Thompson still believes in fairy tales, the same ones he grew up on as a kid. His wife, Polly, doesn't have that luxury right now. She's just come home from a rough day, having lost her job after her manager stole an idea she'd been working on, a smart talking fridge, and on top of that, the family's drowning in debt, with the bank threatening to take their home. Tim proposes something bold, moving out to the countryside village where he grew up to start a tomato farm and sell the harvest. Polly lights up, remembering it was a dream they'd shared back when they first fell for each other in college, but she worries their kids won't adjust since all three are constantly glued to their phones and barely spend real time together as a family anymore. Tim tells her that's exactly the point. Away from the noise of the city, they might actually remember what it means to be a family again. Polly agrees, and the Thompsons pack up for the countryside. The youngest, Fran, is thrilled about the move, since she genuinely loves forests and open space. Her older siblings, Beth and Joe, are the opposite, dreading a life away from their friends and everything familiar. On the train, Beth tells Tim outright that she hates the idea of the countryside and doesn't want to leave her friends behind. Tim insists rural life is far better than anything the city offered, and reminds them this village is the very same one he grew up in himself. Walking toward their new home through the woods, Fran spots a small bag lying on the ground, tucked near the trees. She picks it up, looks around, but sees no one. So she quietly sets it back down without telling her parents what she saw. When the family reaches the house, they're dismayed to find it's old enough that it doesn't even have electricity or heating. Tim promises to buy a generator and get a fire going to keep everyone warm. A friendly neighbor soon stops by to welcome them, a farmer named Brian, along with his wife, Bella. Tim recognizes him instantly, remembering him from childhood back when Tim himself lived in this very village. That night, Polly lights a fire while Tim plays guitar and sings to cheer up the kids, but it's clear neither of them is ready to embrace life out here just yet. While Fran sleeps, a fairy appears at her window, watching her. She's talking quietly with a tiny pixie, no bigger than the palm of a hand, explaining that she's written Fran a letter and asking him to sneak inside and leave it on her bed. He agrees. The next morning, Fran finds the letter waiting for her. The fairy introduces herself as Silky, spelled out phonetically as Silky, thanking Fran for returning her bag, and invites her to visit the world of the fairies hidden in the forest, including a hand-drawn map showing the way in. Thrilled, Fran decides to go on her own, without telling her parents. She changes clothes and heads into the woods until she reaches an enormous tree. Following the map, she learns the tree is a magical gateway, but only opens if she says a specific phrase 3 times, "I believe in magic." She says it, and light bursts from the tree as a doorway appears. Stepping through, she finds herself in the world of the fairies. A chair drops down on a rope, and she rides it up to the home of a fairy named Moonface. Inside, she finds a photo of Moonface standing beside a child. Moonface and Saucepan Man, the pots and pans covered fairy folk who lives with him, suddenly walk in and demand to know how she got in. Flustered, Fran can't answer, and an irritated Moonface orders her to leave immediately, saying he doesn't like children. Before he can finish, Silky arrives and insists Fran is her friend, welcoming her warmly. Moonface admits he doesn't feel the same way about children he once did, but still asks Fran to go. Silky refuses, and instead takes Fran on a full tour, introducing her to the other magical folk and explaining that at the very top of the tree sits a gateway leading to an ever-changing set of worlds. A spinning wheel marked with all the different destinations decides exactly which world opens next, and the magical folk climb up whenever they want to visit somewhere new and have fun. Silky puts on music and everyone dances, pulling Fran in with them. Afterward, she tells Fran that the Land of Goodies is opening today, a world packed with sweets, and invites her along to bring some back. Fran agrees, and they all climb the ladder together until they reach it. A guardian there tells them they may take whatever treats they like, but only for 1 hour, and warns that breaking the rule means being trapped there permanently. Fran happily eats her favorite sweets. Meanwhile, back home, her brother Joe tells their parents he can't find Fran anywhere in the house, and both parents panic and rush out to search for her. Back in the Land of Goodies, Fran is gathering more treats when the ground suddenly shakes. Silky warns her that means their time is up, and they need to leave immediately. Fran ignores her, dashing toward a marshmallow tree to grab one more treat before leaving, but the tree's trunk wraps tightly around her arms, trapping her in place. The guardian arrives, declaring she's broken the rules and will be locked in this world forever. At the last second, the other fairies swoop in, knock the guardian aside, and free her, and the whole group runs until they escape back into the world of the fairies. Once there, Fran tells one of the fairies she needs to go home, since her parents must be worried sick by now. They lead her to a secret passage back to the human world. Right as she returns, her father Tim is questioning her older sister Beth, who angrily blames him for bringing them out here in the first place, despite them telling him plainly they never wanted this life. Before Tim can respond, Fran walks in and tells them she'd been in the world of the fairies the whole time, and that she loved it so much she never wants to go back to the city. Overjoyed, Tim tells her they'll be staying here for good, though her siblings assume she's simply making the whole thing up. The next day, Tim and Polly begin building a greenhouse to grow their tomatoes. Fran goes to Beth and invites her to see the fairy world for herself. Beth, bored out of her mind at home, agrees and brings Joe along too. At the tree, Fran asks them to say the magic phrase, but Beth mocks the whole idea, insisting fairies aren't real, then says the words herself just to prove her wrong. To her shock, the tree lights up and a doorway opens anyway. The siblings step through together and meet the fairies, with Silky welcoming them and announcing the land of birthdays is open. They decide to visit. There, everyone gets one wish granted. Joe wishes to turn into his favorite character from a video game, and it instantly comes true, leaving everyone stunned. Silky wishes for wings and a smaller size. Fran wishes to change her voice, but the new voice turns out horrible, so she wishes for her real one back. Beth, though, secretly wishes that their parents' tomato project will completely fail, hoping it forces the family to move back to the city and keeps that wish to herself. Realizing the wishes have altered their appearance and voices, everyone decides to reverse theirs, except Beth, who quietly holds on to hers. They ask the residents of the land of birthdays how to undo the effects, and are told only someone named Mr. Boom Boom can help. When they find him, he agrees, but only on one condition, that he gets to keep Silky as a gift for Santa. Everyone refuses outright since they all adore her, but to their shock, Silky agrees to sacrifice herself so the others can be restored. He leads them into a magical chamber, reversing everyone's wishes. Furious, the group confronts Mr. Boom Boom and frees Silky from the box she'd been locked inside, and once she steps into the same chamber, her wish is undone too. They all leave together and return to the world of the fairies. Back in the fairy world, Fran and her siblings decide it's time to head home so their parents won't worry. When they arrive, they find their grandmother waiting, furious with Tim and Polly for abandoning the city to live out here. She turns out to be a wealthy businesswoman, and Beth tells her plainly that she hates being out here too, worried about how it looks for her family's reputation. Their grandmother is clearly stung by this and storms off. That night, Polly sits with the kids and shares how she and Tim fell in love in college, dreaming of exactly this life: a farm, a family, and space away from the noise of the city. Explaining Tim brought them here because their old life had become empty, with everyone lost in phones and games instead of each other. The kids are moved by this, and Beth in particular starts to soften toward their new life. As time passes, the family grows closer, working together on the farm, and Tim even starts selling vegetables at the local market. Everyone's overjoyed watching the tomatoes come in. One day, while the family is together in the greenhouse, Fran gets a message from Silky saying she misses her and inviting her and her siblings to a brand new world called the Land of Dreams. Fran tells her siblings, and they agree to visit the next day after finishing their farm chores. Afterward, they goof around with their dad, splashing him with water, and it's clear their new life in the countryside has genuinely brought the family closer, exactly as Tim had hoped. That night over dinner, their father shares his plan to turn the tomato harvest into sauce once it's ready, to help pay off their debts, and everyone agrees it's a great idea, laughing together as a family. Meanwhile, in the world of the fairies, Moonface tells the others a story from his past about a boy he once knew in these very woods, who grew close to him and visited often, until he grew up, stopped coming, and moved away to the city. He warns them not to get too attached to Fran and her siblings, since children always forget their magical friends once they grow up, just like that boy did. Then he leaves. The next day, Tim excitedly tells his family that today's the day they harvest the tomatoes, and that he's invited the whole village to come see and buy them. Everyone's thrilled, and they head into the greenhouse to gather the crop, only to find the entire harvest has rotted overnight. Tim is devastated and completely confused, since everything looked perfectly healthy just the day before. Crushed, he decides to cancel the celebration and move the family back to the city for good. That's when Beth suddenly remembers her secret wish in the land of birthdays, that the tomato project would fail. She realizes with horror that it actually came true, and that she's the reason her father's dream is falling apart. Determined to fix her mistake, she begs Tim to hold off canceling everything for just 2 hours, insisting she needs to do something important first. Tim refuses at first, but she pleads with him to trust her, and he reluctantly agrees. Beth rushes to tell Fran and Joe everything, including her secret wish, and explains she needs to go back to the fairy world to find a way to undo the damage. They agree to help her. At the tree, they ask the fairies for help getting to the land of birthdays so Beth can wish the tomatoes back to health, but the spinning wheel doesn't let them choose. It decides which land opens on its own, and the only one available happens to be the land of know-alls. They go anyway, hoping the residents there might know another way to fix the crop. The know-alls tell them about the land of spells, where a regrowth spell could restore the tomatoes, and mention there's a small aircraft in their palace that can fly them there. The group borrows the plane and heads to the land of spells, where they meet a merchant who tells them he sells any spell they could want, but never for money. When Moonface says they have nothing else to offer, they start to turn away, but Fran refuses to give up. She begins singing, pulling her friends into a song for the merchant to win him over. Touched by the performance, he happily hands over the regrowth spell in a jar, and they head off in high spirits. On the way home, the plane malfunctions and is forced down in a completely different land, and a woman named Dame Snap suddenly appears behind them, marching them into her castle against their will. She's unmistakably cruel, forcing them into a classroom, quizzing them like students, and when they can't answer, she locks them in a cage. With time running out before they need the spell back home, Moonface comes up with an idea, using a bit of the regrowth spell on a rotten vegetable wedged between the cage's iron bars. The vegetable swells, forcing the bars apart just enough for everyone to squeeze through and escape. They race back to the plane, find it working again, and fly out of Dame Snap's land just in time. Back at the farm, the villagers are already arriving to see Tim's tomatoes. He tries to stop them from coming in, since he still believes the crop is ruined, but at that exact moment his children rush in and use the spell to restore the harvest. When the villagers step into the greenhouse, the tomatoes are perfectly healthy. Stunned, Tim and Polly pull their kids aside and ask how this happened, and the children finally explain everything, including their friends in the world of the fairies who helped make it right. Tim is overjoyed, though it's clear he's hiding something of his own about the fairy world. As the celebration begins and he starts preparing his tomato sauce, Moonface appears nearby, watching him from a distance, and his face lights up the moment he sees him. It's here we learn the truth. The boy from Moonface's story, the one who used to visit and eventually grew up and moved away, was Tim himself all along. Moonface quietly starts to leave, but Tim catches the scent of his familiar cologne, and it brings back a rush of childhood memories, playing in these very woods as a boy. Moved by the realization that Moonface never stopped watching over him, Tim goes to dance with his wife and children, and the whole family, finally happy and whole, decides to stay and build their life in the countryside for good. And that's the full story of The Magic Faraway Tree, a film about a family who had to leave the noise of the city behind to remember what actually holds them together. If you enjoyed this recap, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so